Hi, I'm Deirdre Hollman, and I'm here today to talk with you about the film adaptation of Between the World and Me, brought to you by HBO Max. The film was conceived and directed by Camilla Forbes, who also conceived and directed the stage adaptation at the Apollo Theater in 2018. And so with me today in this virtual space are members of the community to discuss the literary continuum from which Ta-Nehisi Coates writes, the cultural and historical relevance of this work for readers and viewers of all ages. And with me in this virtual space is Rich Blint, Abimbola Kai-Lewis, and Kai Greene. Rich Blint is Assistant Professor of Literature in the Department of Literary Studies, Director of the Program in Race and Ethnicity, and affiliate faculty in Gender Studies at the Eugene Lang College of Liberal Arts, the New School. He is co-editor of a special issue of African American Review on James Baldwin, contributing editor of James Baldwin Review, and he wrote the introduction and notes for the ebook Baldwin for Our Times, Writings from James Baldwin for a Time of Sorrow and Struggle from Beacon Press. Abimbola Kai-Lewis is an educator with a PhD in ethnomusicology from UCLA. She is a former New York City teaching fellow with experience working in both charter and public school settings. Abimbola currently teaches at Park Place Community Middle School in New York. Kai Greene is a sophomore at the Beacon School in Manhattan, where he's been a member of the Economics Club, the Medical Club, and varsity soccer team since his freshman year. He was most recently accepted to and participated in the Young Men's Academic Enrichment Academy at Princeton University. And me, Deirdre Hollman, I'm an educator and a doctoral student in the Social Studies program at Teachers College, Columbia University. My research focuses on social studies curriculum and teaching, as well as historical, racial, and visual literacies. I am the former Director of Education and Exhibitions at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, and I'm so proud to bring us all together to be in conversation today. So we've talked a lot about Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me, the book, the text, and how the Apollo Theater took this text to the stage and gave it a whole new life. And now HBO has taken this text to film, and we get to experience it in a whole new light. Rich, tell us your impressions of the HBO special Between the World and Me.
My preliminary impressions are, it's stunning. I mean, the music, how it's shot, the readings by an illustrious array of actors who really give life to Ta-Nehisi's words. You mentioned before about what a pleasure it was for you to hear him read, to intone and articulate in his own voice. It seems to me that what HBO has managed to do must be equally as powerful, because there is this energy that, to me, conjures up the energy of Baltimore right away, but also the kind of historic, this fatigue, racial fatigue that that Coates talks about in the text. And so there's a kind of life, a kind of energy that happens in the film that's really powerful. The one thing I'll say that's interesting is that there's a moment in a documentary of James Baldwin from 1963 called Take This Hammer, where he's driving in a car with public television, and they're driving by something called the Booker T. Washington, a theater which is named like everywhere else, something like that. And they see on this Saturday morning these Black people dancing outside. And he's saying it's not that Black people have rhythm, it's that they live at a different level of experience. And so for me, the film seems to conjure that, echo Baldwin's sense that there's a different level of experience which Black people inhabit. So that tonality, that energy, that beat that Baldwin talks about comes across in the film quite powerfully. It really does.
Abimbola, you're an ethnomusicologist.
Yes.
And picking up on what Rich is talking about in terms of that beat and that rhythm and the way that the text that Coach wrote, almost brings forth a certain kind of blues and a certain kind of hip hop, a certain kind of jazz in and of itself, and then you add to it this visual format and this live performance by actors.
Yes. I think there's a certain timeliness to it, in the sense that you see the rich array that Rich described with T.I. He's going to make appearances, but you also see how the text can really come alive when it is paired with music. That was certainly something that struck me when I heard Jason Moran's live adaptation of the musical score at the Apollo Theater. And I think the way that music is paired with the readings in this film adaptation will definitely make it more real to the audience. And I think that it will evoke a lot of emotions that are definitely bubbling under the surface and are part of what's going on in the United States right now. But it will also make it more applicable to everybody's day-to-day lives.
I have to say that when I saw the stage performance, it was that emotionality that I wasn't prepared for. The gut-wrenching retelling of Ta-Nehisi Coates' experiences, the loss of his best friend, the grief, the grief, the grief. Kai, I wonder how you experienced that emotionality that came forth from the stage performance of Between the World and Me. It was one of the things that really resonated with me, whether it was a high or a low. I was particularly struck by kind of the depths of despair and grief in the many stories around the loss of Coates' best friend. So I wonder, what was your kind of response to that emotionality?
So I feel like the actors and actresses and also the music and the imagery really kind of, when there was a high, it would kind of animate the high, and then you would sort of like feel it, and then when something would fall down to a low, the high would kind of go with it. So like all of the pent up emotions would kind of go into the low. So I think it was really great the way that they did it, and like also the settings that they used. So whenever they were talking about something, like let's say they're talking about Howard, they would have images of Howard, and it would kind of just paint a picture in your head of like what Ta-Nehisi envisioned when he was writing the book. So I thought it was great.
I want to talk about the fact that Ta-Nehisi Coates started out as a journalist. I mean, he may very well define himself as a journalist, but he has this essay. And in many ways, this essay, as we've discussed, brings forward with it not only his personal story, but a lot of history. And Rich, I wonder how you might speak about the role that journalists and writers play in the Black community and the larger American community as kind of historians and storytellers, folks who take on these big questions about who we are personally and as a nation.
That's an incredible question, Deirdre. As you know, Black newspapers go back over a century in this country. And I think the difference between a kind of classic historiography or historians, I mean, you hear Ta-Nehisi talk about this in several places in the public junket, about his own refusal to go to school and do this, but he knew that he could tell a story, and that, being a journalist and telling a story over and over again is how one gets good at it. And I think that from the Chicago Defender to the Amsterdam News, Black journalists have been the ones to chronicle, to bear witness, to tell the truth about what happens to Black people in occupied territories, James Baldwin might call it, in the south sides of Chicago and West Baltimore, all over this aching country. So I think Ta-Nehisi's real gifts get to shine here, partly because I think he takes his cue from Baldwin in a certain kind of economy of phrasing that's here in this text, pacing, the tonality of it all, and how he brings all the kind of emotional density of Black life in a very spare way in the text this also turns up in his journalism. And I think there's a kind of, we talk about the Black radical tradition. The Black radical tradition includes journalism and lay historians that, just litter and people, this country, with people who are griots, really, who are storytellers, who keep our living history alive,
I agree. I wanted to add to that list of griots, writers like Nicole Hannah-Jones, writing today at the New York Times, whose Pulitzer Prize winner she is, and her piece, she spearheaded the piece on 1619.
Mm-hmm.
Writers like Jelani Cobb, who is a historian who's now also a journalist, and Salamisha Tillett, another scholar, journalist, chronicling our culture, bearing witness in those ways. I want to ask Kai. Kai, are you a big letter writer? How do you think the epistolary tradition, as you spoke about it earlier, translates to your generation? I mean, you guys are the digital generation. You text, you make videos. How do you see a relationship between that epistolariness and modern technology?
Yeah, I think the epistolary, the fact that it was more written out, kind of by hand especially, kind of made it a little more meaningful, because sending a text these days is very easy, but like when you send an epistolary or write a letter to somebody, you're kind of like putting out all your emotions in the page, and it's kind of like a view to like what the person is thinking. So as opposed to a video or something else, I think the epistolary was the right choice for Ta-Nehisi to use. And in terms of modern day technology, I believe it's more common to see people text rather than write letters, or record videos of themselves speaking rather than write letters.
I agree. Can you imagine this text as a series of TikTok videos?
Not at all.
Abimbola, what other books would you recommend for teachers to use as supplements to this text and this topic?
Well, a lot of the supplementary text that we used in my classroom came directly from the Between the World and Me study guide that the Apollo's Education Department prepared. The primary text that we looked at, apart from Richard Wright's poem, was Between Ferguson and the World by Jelani Cobb, and it really delved into his experiences as a young man and how, because of his size, there were certain assumptions that people made about him, and how he had to consistently disprove those ideas and the stereotypes accompanying them. One of the things that was a little unexpected for us was that we also started to do some project-based learning initiatives after we did our Between the World and Me unit. And that ultimately became, surprisingly, an investigation of representations of the Statue of Liberty. And we read a series of historical articles about the connection between race and identity and immigration. And the students voted to name that particular unit for us Between the Statue of Liberty and Me. So that became an outgrowth of a lot of the readings and work that we did over the course of our Between the World and Me unit.
Rich, you teach at the college level in higher education. What other texts would you pair with this to explore race, identity, representation, the American dream?
Oh, there's so many. I'm not sure where to begin. I think I would turn to more contemporary examples. Casey Lehman's Heavy, an American memoir, is incredible, and I think is a parallel tale to the one offered up by Ta-Nehisi Coates. I would also think that Brittany Cooper's An Eloquent Rage is also really incredible, made the bestsellers list during this COVID moment. Though these are two books, I think, along with Jasmine Ward's amazing collection, Salvage the Bones, just get to the complexity and the contradictions of what happens in this post-civil rights moment, right? So this idea that somehow America has always been, characterized by democracy and that grand word progress is really thrown into really proper relief by those three texts, it seems to me, which are wonderful kind of parallels to the work of Coates. So that's what I would recommend contemporaneously.
Coates, in the tradition that you outlined earlier, is interrogating the American dream and all that it problematizes for Black folks because of the way it devalues Black life in order to exist as holding up white life. The American dream is countered by a literary tradition that talks about Black futures in a different kind of way. And we're in a very interesting moment in 2020 to be thinking about what the American dream means for Black folks in 2020 and what our Black future may and can be. So I wonder if each of you could talk about kind of what is your hope for our Black future. Rich, you can start.
My Black future, I think it's an American future, to be very honest with you. I think there's no way to disentangle a Black future from the future of this country. Very Baldwinian thing to say, I'll admit. And so what my hope for a Black future is that we deal, or future of this country, is that we deal head on, unflinchingly, with the history that we've all produced, all of us. And that's very difficult work. But I think the last 4 years proves over and over again how just urgent that work is, and how if we don't do that work, we're all put in danger. So that's my sense, that there's a certain kind of unflinching, unshrinking look at the record and the history of the country that can help us move forward. That's my sense.
Kai, what about your Black future? What do you hope for your own Black future and for the future of America?
For the future of America and my own Black future, I would hope that Black people have a part in America where they have lots of more power and are in politics more. And rather than just having decisions made for them, I want them to be the ones making decisions in the future. And even with Barack Obama, I would like to see a lot more presidents that are African American or even any other race, and not have it be a huge deal in the future when there's let's say a Black president or a Latino president or any race, I would say. So,
for yourself?
And for myself, I would like to see a future where I'm able to guide people that are having issues with dealing with their own race. Let's say they go to a school where they're not represented, helping them find a way to really be at peace with who they are, I would say.
I'm going to ask the question again because I'm a little confused.
Oh, sure.
What would you like to see in your own Black future?
I said I would like to I would like to be able to help other people that look like me, other Black kids, be able to really be at peace with who they are. If they're at let's say a school that's predominantly white or a neighborhood that's predominantly white, they're able to feel comfortable in their own skin, I would say.
Thank you. Abimbola?
Yes. When I think about a Black future, I was thinking about what Rich said and what Kai said, and it reminded me of Ta-Nehisi Coates talking about what education was to him and the challenges that he faced when he was in school, and the frustration about not necessarily having what we spoke about earlier, culturally relevant and culturally responsive education. So when I imagine a Black future, I would want to see tremendous education reform so that students are able to envision the possibilities that education can bring, that teachers are invested in making sure that our students soar, that they're able to move forth, whether it is that they want to go to college or whether they pursue their talents as Coates did and went into journalism, that they find that thing that makes them stand out, that is their passion, so that they can contribute to the greater society and become successful. That's my hope and vision for the future.
So we came together to really discuss Between the World and Me as part of a larger literary tradition. And I think on the flip side of having a literary tradition is the idea that we are a hugely reading public. And so what do you have to say about the importance of cultural literacy and the fact that how necessary the arts and publishing, poetry, music are to the culture and the sustainability of our stories?
I mean, if I can take that one, what I want to say very clearly is that, as Baldwin said in 1963, that Black artists are dealing all the time with very inarticulate people in this country, that there's a certain kind of mass semi-literate population that is what accounts for the ignorance and the apathy. And so I think your question is really well taken, and I'm eager to hear my colleagues speak on this, but I think that's absolutely the case, that, it's a real embrace of culture, of literature, of music, unsegregated, right? Unappropriated, unfiltered, that might help bridge some of the gap. I mean, there's other things that will help as well, but I think it's getting people to read in this country that will take them out of a certain kind of semi-literacy and into a world of apathy and a sense of belonging to the entire nation, as opposed to the polarization that we've seen over the last 4 years. And that was evident, as you can tell, in the last election.
Abimbola, do you want to jump in on the literacy question and the importance of literacy, reading, writing?
I think that those are so essential in making sense of the world around us. Because I work primarily with middle school students, you see early there's some resistance to reading. Students will openly declare that they hate reading, and I think that in large part that comes from not having been exposed to genres of books and authors that really speak to them and speak to their lives. I was thinking when you asked me the earlier question about texts that connect to Between the World and Me, or would sort of be used as an extension or a supplementary text. As I was listening to Rich, I also thought about Nick Stone's amazing writings, Dear Martin and Dear Justice. I have read Dear Martin and I gave it to my niece. It's something that I would love to dig into with students, because I think that that's the kind of text that would take students from being resistant to reading or immensely disliking it to starting to warm up to the fact that there are stories being written by authors who are in tune with what's going on with young people, what's going on in their lives, and how that connects to the greater society.
I agree with you. I would add to that list of names Jason Reynolds.
Oh, of course, yes.
Boy.
Yeah.
Many, many, many great folks.
Yes.
Rich, part of what I think makes Between the World and Me a blues story is the way that Coach really interrogates Black life and Black death. Why don't you talk to me a little bit about how that resonates with you?
There's something about that Black American communities haven't really talked about. Something about this text seems to be extended outward, or it is external mode of address in terms of how it's been taken up by people. And I think there must be something we can do to isolate that part of the text and really deal with that Black intramural question head on. It's not simply about white America, right? Just as there's beauty and anguish in Black life, there's also, the kind of oppression of the dominant society, but also the ways in which we've internalized it. And so the work that's before us to certainly dislodge that fact of Black life.
It's deep. It's deep because I think ultimately this letter, this essay, is a plea for our survival. I think that Coates, as was Baldwin, as many writers in this tradition, are trying to fortify us against all that is trying to destroy us. And as a people, we've survived, and that's to be celebrated. But it's also something to be endured, and that we have to, really prepare ourselves to continue to live on, so that we can continue to live through our beauty and our joy and our intellect and our ingenuity into the future. And so ultimately, I think this is a triumph of survival, even Coach's own survival, his way of surviving Baltimore and becoming one of America's preeminent writers. I want to celebrate him. I want to celebrate his efforts to not just educate his own son, but all of our sons and daughters and us as a community. And so I'm grateful for the text. I'm grateful for the Apollo for bringing it to life on stage. And I'm grateful to HBO for giving us this opportunity to experience it again in a film adaptation.
We're grateful to you, Deirdre. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you for joining us for this discussion of Between the World and Me.